The Velthari warship Crimson Fong dropped out of hyperspace above the mining colony of Dust 7 like a thundercloud made of steel and malice. It was supposed to be a demonstration, a warning, the kind of visit that made entire species reconsider their life choices. Commander Kai Dravon stood at the bridge viewport, his four obsidian eyes watching the tiny colony below with something between amusement and contempt. At nearly 3 meters tall, with a hide like volcanic rock and a jaw that could bite through reinforced hull plating, Kai was what his species called an apex enforcer, the kind of creature the Velthari sent when they wanted a message delivered in the language of fear. One human female, his second-in-command, murmured behind him. She is the colony's designated liaison. Kai's ridge crest flattened. One. He made a sound deep in his chest. Not quite a laugh, not quite a growl. Then let us not keep her waiting. Nora Ewan was eating a protein bar when the shuttle landed. She didn't stop eating. 23 years old, 163 centimeters tall, with dark circles under her eyes from a double shift in the processors and dust permanently embedded under her fingernails. She stood outside the colony's main airlock like she was waiting for a bus that was running late, and she was mildly annoyed about it. The shuttle hatch opened. Commander Kai descended the ramp. Nora looked up at him, then up a little more. She took another bite of her protein bar. Kai had done this 41 times. 41 diplomatic confrontations on 41 worlds across 7-star systems. He had watched creatures twice his size flinch. He had seen military commanders lose control of their bodily functions. He had once made a Grethily High Senator, a species known for their iron composure, actually weep upon seeing him descend a boarding ramp. This human just chewed. He stepped forward and drew himself to his full height, letting his chest plates expand, letting the bioluminescent threat patterns along his neck blaze to full intensity. Deep crimson and furious violet, patterns that in Velthari biology screamed, "I will end you," in every frequency the nervous system could process. He roared. It wasn't a sound so much as a physical event. The ground vibrated. Loose gravel skipped across the landing pad. The colony windows rattled in their frames. 2 junior officers behind Nora made undignified noises and stepped backward. Nora stopped chewing. She tilted her head slightly to the left. Then she rolled her neck, a slow, deliberate rotation, vertebrae popping audibly in the sudden silence, and smiled at him. Not a nervous smile, not a placating smile, the kind of smile that said, "I have seen worse, and it didn't survive the experience either." "You must be Commander Kai," she said. "I'm Nora, Colony Liaison, Dust 7. You want the dilithium shipments rerouted through Velthari tariff channels. We don't want that." So, she gestured at a pair of folding chairs someone had set up beside the airlock. Practical, a little weathered, deeply unglamorous. "Sit down, and let's figure out where the middle is." Kai stared at her. In 41 confrontations, no one had ever told him to sit down. "You are not afraid," he said. His translator rendered it perfectly, a flat statement, edged with something that wasn't quite confusion, but was close enough to be uncomfortable for someone of his rank. Nora shrugged. "I'm on hour 19 of a 22-hour shift. I've got a stress fracture in my left hand that medical keeps deprioritizing, and the processor on level 3 has been making a sound that means it's going to need a full rebuild inside of 2 weeks. She looked at him steadily. "You're a problem I can solve by talking. That's actually the good kind of problem today." Kai's crest rose and fell. Beside him, his second-in-command made a very small, very quiet sound that Kai recognized as suppressed discomfort. He sat down. They talked for 4 hours. Kai had never talked for 4 hours in a diplomatic engagement. Usually 20 minutes was sufficient, 20 minutes of structured intimidation, the signing of whatever document his superiors required, and then departure. Clean. Efficient. The Velthari way. Nora talked about processing margins with the focused intensity of someone who had personally crawled through every pipe and manifold on this rock. She talked about the colony's debt structure, the shipping contracts, the 3 families whose children had been born here and who had no other home. She talked about why the tariff rerouting would functionally bankrupt Dust 7 inside of 18 months, and what that would actually cost the Velthari in lost production over the following decade. She did math in her head faster than his translator could keep up. She caught 2 errors in the Velthari contract language that even Kai's legal officers hadn't flagged. At hour 3, She produced a counter-proposal written on the back of a maintenance schedule, in pencil. That was, Kai's second-in-command admitted quietly, structurally more favorable to both parties than the original Veltri document. At hour 4, Kai leaned back in the small folding chair that was clearly not designed for his mass and studied the human across from him. "You were not afraid," he said again. It was still bothering him. Nora glanced up from the document. "I was a little afraid," she said, with the casual honesty of someone who had no energy left for pretense. "You're genuinely terrifying. Objectively. I want to be clear about that." "Then why?" "Because being afraid and acting afraid are different things." She set down the pencil. "And because the moment I act afraid, I lose every piece of leverage I have, and this colony loses everything." She looked at him, not challenging, not defiant, just very, very direct. "I don't get to be afraid right now, so I'm not." Kai was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the Velthari officers had gradually, over the course of 4 hours, drifted from parade ground formation to something more resembling loitering. One of them had accepted a cup of something hot from a colony worker. 2 others were watching the ore processors through the fence with what appeared to be genuine industrial curiosity. "Your species is very strange," Kai said finally. "We get that a lot. You are small. You are fragile. You have no natural weapons, no hardened biology, no threat displays." He paused. "And yet every species in this quadrant that has attempted to simply remove humanity from the equation has failed. Catastrophically. Often in ways that defy strategic prediction." Nora smiled again, smaller this time, more tired. "We're stubborn," she said simply. "And we're good at finding the middle. When people let us." She tapped the counter-proposal. "This works for you. It works for us. Nobody has to do anything ugly." Kai picked up the document. "Read it again. Carefully. I will need to transmit this to High Command." "I figured." She stood up, stretched her back with a wince that suggested the stress fracture wasn't the only thing medical was deprioritizing. "We've got a crew bunk if you want to wait inside. Hot food, nothing fancy. Your officers are welcome too." She glanced at the one holding the cup. "Looks like Sergeant whoever that is already found the coffee situation." Kai followed her gaze. His sergeant, a 7-year veteran of 23 enforcement operations, was holding the cup in both hands and staring into it with an expression of profound, suspicious interest. "What is that?" Kai asked. "Coffee. A beet. It's a human thing. Stimulant. We basically run on it." She paused, considering. "Actually, that might explain a lot." High Command approved the counter-proposal. It took 11 days, which Kai spent at Dust 7, because his second-in-command pointed out, correctly, that departing before confirmation would create a bad faith precedent. He ate colony food. He watched her processors. He played 3 games of something called chess against Nora, lost all 3, and then spent 2 days reading the rules more carefully before demanding a rematch. He lost the rematch too. On the day the Crimson Fong finally departed, Kai stood at the viewport and watched Dust 7 shrink to a pale in the dark. His second-in-command appeared at his shoulder. "She was not what I expected," the officer said carefully. "No," Kai agreed. "The roar." "She rolled her neck," Kai said, and smiled. He was quiet for a moment. "I have been an Apex enforcer for 19 years. I have never had someone roll their neck at me." "What does it mean?" "The neck rolling." Kai thought about it. About the stress fracture she hadn't mentioned until hour 2. About the 22-hour shifts and the broken ore processor and the 3 families whose children had no other home. About the way she'd done the math without a calculator, written the counter-proposal in pencil, caught the errors his own lawyers had missed. "I think," he said slowly, "it means, I know this is going to hurt. I've decided to do it anyway." His second-in-command considered this. "Dangerous," the officer said. "Extremely," Kai agreed. He watched the pale dot disappear into the stars. "Don't schedule any more enforcement visits to human colonies," he said. "Diplomatic only. And brief your officers." A pause. "And confiscate whatever the sergeant brought back in that container. I don't want anyone developing a dependency on whatever coffee actually is." It was, everyone later agreed, a very sensible order. The sergeant ignored it entirely. Humanity doesn't always win by being the strongest, the biggest, or the most fearsome. Sometimes they win because they're the only ones in the room who've already decided they can't afford to lose, and they look at the thing that's supposed to terrify them, roll their neck, and get to work.